Episode 14, The Heart of the Hollow. The morning after their close escape from the Silent Circle, Eli and Evelyn sat in the quiet of the cabin, exhaustion weighing heavy on their shoulders. The previous night had brought them closer to unraveling the Circle's nefarious plans, but it had also revealed just how dangerous their enemies were. The Circle was intent on summoning the Eternal Shadow, and only by stopping them could they prevent Black Hollow from becoming a permanent prison of darkness. Eli's fingers traced the edges of the torn pages from the Circle's tome, still spread across the table. We have to find the heart of the Hollow. If the Circle wants to complete the ritual, this is the only place they'll be able to do it. Evelyn nodded grimly. But we don't even know where it is. The Founders hid it for a reason. Eli leaned back in his chair, thinking. The heart was the source of Black Hollow's cursed power, the very heart of the town's darkest legacy. No one had spoken of it for generations, and yet, the Circle was on the verge of finding it. He had a gut feeling they were getting closer, too close. We need more information, Eli said finally. Clara might have something. She studied the history of this town more than anyone. Clara's house was tucked away at the edge of Black Hollow, a small but well-maintained cottage filled with books, maps, and documents, all dedicated to the town's forgotten past. When Eli and Evelyn arrived, Clara was at her kitchen table, poring over an old manuscript. At their arrival, she looked up, her brow furrowed with concern. "Are you two okay?" Clara asked, her voice laced with worry. "I heard what happened last night. The Circle must know you're onto them by now." Evelyn nodded, her face pale but resolute. "We're fine, but we need your help. We need to find the heart of the Hollow. It's the key to stopping this curse." Clara paused, glancing down at the manuscript in her hands. "The heart," she murmured, as if she were piecing together an old memory. "I've come across mentions of it, but they're vague, almost like the town's founders tried to erase all traces of its existence." Eli sat down beside her, his tone urgent. "We need to know everything you can find. The Circle is after it, and they won't stop until they find it. If they complete their ritual, the curse will be unstoppable." Clara's eyes darkened as she flipped through the pages of the manuscript, muttering to herself. Finally, she found what she was looking for. "Here," she said, pointing to a passage. "It says that the Founders built Black Hollow around the heart of the Hollow, this central, powerful place where the town's energy converged. It wasn't just a source of power, it was a place they swore to protect. They believed it kept the spirits of the past contained." Evelyn leaned in, her gaze intense. "Is there a location? A map?" Clara hesitated. "Not exactly. But there's a reference to a place called the Path of Ash. It's mentioned in one of the oldest records of the town's founding. It's the route the Founders took to reach the heart, and it was supposed to be a barrier. No one could enter or leave without being authorized." "That's it," Eli said. "The path. We need to find it." Clara nodded, but there was an edge of worry in her voice. "Be careful. If the Circle is already on the trail, they might have figured out where it leads. And the Path of Ash, it's no ordinary trail. It's cursed." Later that evening, Eli and Evelyn set off toward the forest, their pack heavy with supplies. They knew that time was running out. The Circle's ritual was close to completion, and every minute counted. They followed the faintest trail leading into the trees, where the air grew colder with every step they took. The Path of Ash wasn't easy to find, but something about the eerie stillness of the woods seemed to draw them forward as if the forest itself was guiding them. The trail twisted deeper into the forest, winding between twisted trees that seemed to grow closer with each step, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The further they went, the darker the forest became, until even the moonlight could barely penetrate the thick canopy above. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a clearing. The forest had opened up into a large, wide space, the ground covered in dark, ashen soil. The air felt thick here, heavy with a strange sense of foreboding. In the center of the clearing stood a stone altar, its surface carved with strange symbols and markings, worn with age. The trees surrounding it were scorched and blackened, their branches twisted and broken, as though burned from within. Evelyn approached the altar cautiously, running her fingers over the symbols. These symbols. I've seen them before, on the pages we took from the circle. Eli stepped forward, his eyes scanning the altar. This has to be it, the heart of the hollow. The moment he said the words, the air around them shifted. A subtle pressure began to build, like an invisible force pushing against their chests. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and a low, distant sound echoed from deep within the forest, something like a growl, low and menacing. "We need to get out of here," Eli said urgently, his pulse quickening. "The circle's here. They've found it." Suddenly, silent and swift figures emerged from the shadows. Cloaked figures wearing the same black robes and hoods moved around them in a circle, cutting off any chance of escape. The silent circle had arrived. Their leader stepped forward, his voice cold and commanding. "You've gone too far, Eli and Evelyn. The heart belongs to the circle. It's time to claim it." The pressure in the air grew stronger, and Eli felt the cold grip of fear wrapping around his heart. He could see the circle's members gathering in a ritualistic formation, their hands raised, their faces hidden beneath their hoods. They were about to complete the summoning. Evelyn's eyes met Eli's, and he could see the resolve in them. "We can't let them do this," she whispered. Without warning, Evelyn charged forward, running toward the altar. Eli followed close behind, the circle's members chanting, their voices rising in unison as dark tendrils of energy began to spiral from the altar. The leader of the circle raised his hand, and a burst of dark energy shot toward Evelyn. But Eli was faster. He shoved her aside, taking the full brunt of the dark magic as it hit him in the chest. The pain was unlike anything he had ever felt, sharp, burning, and cold all at once. He collapsed to the ground, his vision swimming as darkness threatened to overtake him. Evelyn screamed, rushing to his side. She could feel the cold magic seeping into his skin, freezing his body, turning it stiff. Her heart raced as she grabbed his arm, trying to pull him up, but the dark energy was too strong. Eli's body was locked in place, his eyes barely open, his lips whispering a word she couldn't hear. The circle's leader stepped forward, his voice dripping with triumph. "This is the end. The heart will be ours, and Black Hollow will belong to the circle." But just as the circle prepared to complete the ritual, Evelyn's eyes fell on the stone altar once more. The symbols, the markings, they were wrong. They weren't just markings, they were a trap. A binding spell. The founders hadn't just protected the heart, they had bound it. The heart of the hollow could be used as a weapon, yes, but only if one understood the language of the curse. Evelyn grabbed a nearby rock, smashing it against the altar. The sound echoed through the clearing like a crack of thunder. The circle faltered for a moment, their concentration broken. The tendrils of dark energy from the altar flickered and weakened. Evelyn knelt beside Eli, clutching the torn pages from the circle's tome, her fingers trembling as she found the counter-ritual. She whispered the incantation, not caring that the circle's leader was advancing toward her with death in his eyes. As she finished the last line of the incantation, the altar burst with blinding light. The dark energy from the circle's ritual shattered, and the figures of the silent circle writhed in agony as the spell backfired on them. Evelyn turned to Eli, her breath catching in her throat. "Eli? Please, stay with me." The pain in his eyes faded, and his body loosened as the dark magic released its hold. Slowly, he sat up, gasping for air. You did it." Evelyn pulled him into an embrace, relief flooding through her. The circle had been stopped, for now. But as they looked back toward the altar, they knew the battle was far from over. The heart of the hollow might have been sealed again, but the circle was still out there, and their thirst for power would never be quenched. End of episode 14.